The rain hammered against the metal walls of the power station like 1,000 angry fists. Junyo wiped the sweat from his forehead and checked the pressure gauges one more time. Everything looked normal, but the storm outside was getting worse. Wind screamed through the gaps in the old building, making the whole structure groan and shake. He had been working the night shift for 3 years now. Most people hated it, but Junho preferred the quiet. During the day, the station was full of noise and people shouting orders. At night, it was just him, the machines, and the endless hum of the generators. He could think clearly. He could work without anyone bothering him. Junho was 28 years old, though most days he felt older. His hands were rough from years of fixing pipes and welding broken equipment. His back hurt from climbing through narrow maintenance tunnels. But the pay was decent and he could send most of it back home to Earth. His mother needed medicine. His sister was in school. They were counting on him. The lights flickered. Junyo frowned and grabbed his tool belt. Flickering lights usually meant a problem with the external connections. He would have to go outside and check the junction boxes. In this weather, that was going to be miserable. He pulled on his heavy work coat. It was old and patched in several places, but it kept him warm. The colony station on Taejin Prime was always cold, even inside the buildings. Outside during a storm, it was worse. The wind came straight down from the frozen mountains and cut through everything. Junho stepped out into the rain. Within seconds, he was soaked. Water ran down his face and into his eyes. He could barely see 3 meters ahead. The wind pushed him sideways and he had to lean into it just to walk forward. The junction boxes were behind the main building near the waste recycling units. Nobody went back there unless they had to. It smelled bad and the machines made loud grinding noises all day and night. Junyo navigated through the darkness using his flashlight to find the way. Something moved. Junho stopped. He swept his flashlight across the area. For a moment he saw nothing but rain and shadows. Then he saw it again. Something small, huddled behind one of the recyclers. Something alive. His first thought was that it might be an animal. Sometimes small creatures from the mountains came down looking for food. But as he got closer, he realized this was no animal. It was a child. Junho's heart jumped. He rushed forward, forgetting about the junction boxes. The child was curled up in a tight ball, trying to stay under a small overhang that barely protected her from the rain. She was tiny, maybe 7 or 8 years old, but she was not human. Her skin was a pale silver-blue color, visible even in the dim light. Her eyes were large and dark, taking up much of her small face. She wore thin clothes that were completely soaked through. She was shaking so hard that Junho could see it from a meter away. An alien child, alone in the storm. Junho did not hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside her, trying to make himself less threatening. The girl flinched away from him, pressing herself harder against the wall. "Hey, it's okay," Junho said softly. He kept his voice calm and gentle. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're freezing out here." The girl stared at him with those huge eyes. She did not speak. She just trembled. Junho looked down at his coat. It was the only warm thing he had with him. Slowly, so he would not scare her, he took it off. The cold bit into him immediately, but he ignored it. He held the coat out to her. "Here, take this. You need it more than I do." For a long moment, the girl did not move. Then slowly, she reached out one small hand. Her fingers were ice cold when they touched his. Junho helped her put the coat on. It was far too big for her, drowning her small frame, but it was warm and dry on the inside. The girl pulled the coat tight around herself. Some of the shaking stopped. She looked up at Junho with something that might have been gratitude. "Can you tell me your name?" Junho asked. The girl's lips moved. Her voice was so quiet that he almost could not hear it over the rain. "Nari. Nari. That's a nice name. I'm Junho." He smiled at her, trying to be reassuring. "Where are your parents, Nari? Where is your family?" The girl's eyes filled with fear. She shook her head quickly and pressed herself back against the wall. Okay. We don't have to talk about that now." Junho looked around. The storm was getting worse, and this was not a safe place. "Listen, Nari, my home is not far from here. It's warm and dry. I have food. Would you come with me, just until we can find your family?" Nari stared at him for a long time. Unyo could see her thinking, trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she gave a small nod. Junho helped her stand. She was so light, like she weighed almost nothing. He guided her carefully through the rain, keeping himself between her and the worst of the wind. She held onto his arm with both hands, her small fingers gripping tight. His quarters were in the worker housing block, a 10-minute walk from the power station. By the time they arrived, Junho was shaking from the cold. His shirt was plastered to his skin, and he could not feel his fingers. But Nari was still wrapped in his coat, and that was what mattered. Inside, Junho turned up the heating and got Nari a blanket. She sat on his small couch, still wearing his coat over the blanket. She had not let go of the coat even for a moment. Junho made hot soup. It was nothing fancy, just instant noodles with some vegetables, but it was warm. He gave Nari a bowl and was relieved to see her eat. She was hungry. That was good. Hungry meant alive and functioning. While she ate, Junho studied her. She was definitely Velothi. He had seen a few Velothi before, though they rarely visited human colonies. They were one of the major powers in the galaxy, far more advanced than humans. Their empire controlled dozens of star systems. What was a Velothi child doing alone on a backwater human colony during a storm? Nari, he said gently. Can you tell me what happened? How did you get here? The girl looked down at her soup. When she spoke, her galactic common was broken and heavily accented. Bad men. They took me. I ran away. Her voice was small and frightened. I hide, then rain come. I got lost. Junho's jaw tightened. Someone had kidnapped her. That explained why she was so scared. Do you know where your family is? Your mother or father? Mama far away. Nari's eyes filled with tears. Mama important. Bad people want hurt Mama. They take me. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now. Junho moved closer and patted her shoulder awkwardly. He was not good with children, but he had to try. I'm going to help you. We'll find your mama, okay? Nari nodded, wiping at her eyes with the sleeve of his coat. Junho knew what he had to do. He had to report this to the station authorities. A lost alien child, especially one who had been kidnapped, was serious. The authorities would know what to do. They would have resources to find her family. He used his communication terminal to contact station security. He explained that he had found a lost Velothi child and gave his location. The officer on the other end told him to stay put. Someone would come right away. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on his door. Junho expected to see regular security officers. Instead, 3 men in expensive suits stood outside. Behind them were 2 armed guards. One of the men, tall with sharp features, looked past Junho into the room. His eyes locked onto Nari. We'll take her from here, the man said. His voice was cold and formal. Something in his tone made Junho uncomfortable. Who are you? Are you with her family? That's not your concern. You've done your duty by reporting her. Now step aside. The man tried to push past Junho, but Junho blocked the doorway. He was not a large man, but he was strong from years of manual labor. I'd like to see some identification first, Junho said firmly. And I want to know where you're taking her. The man's eyes narrowed. This is official business. Move aside or we'll move you. Junho glanced back at Nari. She had gone very still, her eyes wide with terror. She was staring at the men in the doorway like they were monsters. That decided it. No, Junho said. Not until I know she'll be safe. The tall man's face darkened. You're making a serious mistake. Forget you saw this child. If you know what's good for you, you'll hand her over and never speak of this again. He signaled to the guards. They moved forward, hands on their weapons. Junho's mind raced. These were not people trying to help Nari. These were the bad men she had talked about. Or working for them. He slammed the door shut and locked it. It would not hold them for long, but he needed time to think. Nari, come here, quick. The girl jumped up, still wrapped in his coat, and ran to him. Junho could hear the men outside arguing, then the sound of something heavy hitting the door. He had maybe 2 minutes before they broke through. 2 minutes to figure out how to protect a terrified alien, child from people who had guns and authority. 2 minutes to make a choice that would change his life forever. Junho looked down at Nari's frightened face, and he knew what he had to do. He would protect her, no matter what it cost him. Junho grabbed Nari's hand and pulled her toward the back of his small quarters. The door shuddered under another heavy impact. Wood splintered. They had maybe 30 seconds. Listen to me carefully, Junho said, kneeling down to look Nari in the eyes. Do you trust me? The girl nodded, clutching his coat tighter around herself. Good. We're going somewhere they can't find you. Stay quiet and stay close. Junho moved to his bedroom and pushed the bed aside. Underneath was a maintenance hatch. He had used it before when repairs needed to be done on the lower-level systems. Most people did not even know these hatches existed. He pulled it open. Below was darkness and the smell of oil and metal. Behind them, the front door crashed open. Heavy footsteps entered the apartment. "Go!" Junho whispered urgently. "Climb down the ladder." Nari hesitated for only a second, then she slipped through the hatch. Junho followed her, pulling the hatch closed above them just as he heard voices in the bedroom. "Check everywhere. They can't have gone far." Junho and Nari descended the ladder in darkness. At the bottom was a narrow tunnel filled with pipes and cables. Emergency lights gave off a dim red glow. It was cramped and cold, but it was safe. For now, Junho led Nari through the tunnels. He knew these passages well. He had spent 3 years maintaining them. They connected all the buildings in the colony, allowing workers to access systems without going outside. The tunnels went on for kilometers in every direction. After 20 minutes of walking, Junho finally stopped. They were deep in the system now, in a section that had been abandoned years ago. "Nobody came here anymore. We can rest for a minute," he said quietly. Nari sat down on a dry patch of floor. Even in the dim light, Junho could see that she was exhausted. Her eyes were red and she was still shaking, though whether from cold or fear he could not tell. "Why those men want hurt me?" she asked in her broken common. Junho sat down beside her. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." He pulled out his personal communicator. It was old and barely functional, but it still worked for basic messages. He sent a quick text to Minho, his co-worker and the closest thing he had to a friend on the station. "Need help, emergency. Meet me at Junction 7. Come alone." He waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, his communicator buzzed. "On my way." Junction 7 was a meeting point in the tunnels where several passages connected. Junho and Nari waited there in silence. The girl had fallen asleep against his side, still wrapped in his coat. She looked so small and vulnerable. How could anyone want to hurt a child? Footsteps echoed in the tunnel. Junho tensed, ready to run. Then Minho's familiar face appeared in the red emergency lighting. Minho was older than Junho, maybe 40, with gray in his hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had worked on the colony for 15 years. He knew everything and everyone. "What's going on?" Minho asked. Then he saw Nari. His eyes went wide. "Is that the kid everyone's looking for?" "You know about her?" "The whole station knows. Security has been going crazy for the past hour. They're searching every building." Minho looked at Junho seriously. "They're saying she's dangerous, that she's infected with something. They want everyone to report if they see her." "That's a lie," Junho said firmly. "She's not sick. She's just scared." Men in suits came to take her, Minho. They had guns. She was terrified of them. Minho studied Nari's sleeping face. "She's Velathi, right?" "Yes. Velathi don't come to colonies like this." "They think we're beneath them?" Minho crouched down. "So what's a Velathi kid doing here? And why are people so desperate to find her?" She said bad men took her. She escaped and got lost in the storm. "I found her behind the recycling units." Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You know you're in serious trouble, right? Hiding her like this. They'll arrest you. Maybe worse. I know. So why are you doing it?" Junho looked down at Nari. "Because she asked me for help. What else could I do?" Minho shook his head, but he was smiling slightly. "You always were too decent for your own good." He stood up. "All right. I'll help, but we need to be smart about this. Can you find out who those men were? The ones who came to my apartment?" "I can try. I know some people in administration. Give me a few hours." Minho paused. "Where will you go?" "I'll stay in the tunnels for now." "Keep moving. They can't search the whole system. Be careful. They're really serious about finding her." "I've never seen security this worked up before." Minho turned to leave, then stopped. "Junho, there's something else. I heard rumors. Someone's offering money for information about a Velathi child. A lot of money. Enough to buy a ship and leave this rock forever." Junho's blood ran cold. "How much money?" "Millions of credits. And it's not just local. The bounty is registered across multiple systems. Whoever wants her, they have serious resources." After Minho left, Junho sat thinking. A bounty that large meant this was bigger than just a simple kidnapping. Nari was important somehow, but why? What made one little girl worth millions of credits? He looked at her sleeping peacefully against him. In his coat, she just looked like a child who needed protection. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous, but someone thought she was worth a fortune, and they wanted her badly enough to lie, to search an entire station to offer rewards that could change lives. Junho made a decision. He could not keep running forever. Eventually they would find him. He needed to get Nari off the station entirely. He needed to take her somewhere safe, but where and how? Over the next 2 days, Junho and Nari lived in the tunnels. They moved constantly, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. Junho stole food from supply rooms and water from emergency stations. Nari never complained, though he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She stayed close to him always. At night, when she had nightmares, he would hold her and tell her stories about Earth. Stories about his mother and sister. Stories about the ocean, which Nari had never seen. The stories seemed to calm her. She still wore his coat constantly. Even when it was warm enough in the tunnel, she would not take it off. "Why you help me?" she asked one night. "You not know me. I'm not human," Junho thought about it. "Where I come from, we help people who need help. It doesn't matter if they're human or not. You needed help, so I helped. That's all?" "Human strange," Nari said, but she was smiling a little. On the 3rd day, Minho found them again. He looked worried. "I found out who those men were," he said. "They're private contractors, mercenaries. Someone hired them to search for a specific Velothi child." "Did you find out who hired them?" "No, but I found something else." Minho pulled out a data pad. "I accessed the security logs. A ship arrived at the station 6 weeks ago. Unscheduled, it stayed for 3 hours, then left. During those 3 hours, someone filed a complaint about suspicious activity near the cargo docks. Security investigated but found nothing. What does that have to do with Nari? The timing matches when she says she was taken. I think she was on that ship. Someone brought her here and was holding her somewhere. Then she escaped during the storm." Junho felt anger building in his chest. "They kidnapped her and brought her here? Why, what do they want?" "I don't know. But here's the important part. I checked who filed that complaint about suspicious activity. It was a woman named Sola. She works in the station cafeteria. I talked to her. She says she saw men unloading something from that ship, something small and alive. They were rough with it. Where can I find Sola? I already talked to her about you. She wants to help. She said any man who would risk everything for a lost child deserves support." Minho smiled. "She's getting you transport documents, fake ones. They won't hold up to serious inspection, but they'll get you off the station." "Off the station? Where would I go?" "Anywhere but here. They're tightening security. In another day or 2, they'll seal the station. Nobody in or out until they find her. You need to leave now." Junho looked at Nari. She was watching him with those big dark eyes, understanding more than he thought. "We need find my mama," she said softly. "Mama will know what to do. Mama will stop bad people. Where is your mama, Nari?" The girl hesitated. Then she said something that made Junho's heart stop. "Mama is Empress. Mama rules Velothi people. That why bad people take me. They want hurt Mama." Junho stared at her. For a moment, he could not speak. Then he looked at Minho, whose face had gone pale. "Did she just say?" Minho started. "Empress," Junho repeated numbly. "Her mother is the Velothi Empress. No wonder there was a bounty. No wonder people were searching so desperately. Nari was not just any child. She was royalty. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And Junho, a simple maintenance worker from Earth, had been hiding her in maintenance tunnels." "We're dead," Minho whispered. "If the Velothi find out we had their princess and didn't return her immediately, they'll execute us. If the people who kidnapped her find us, they'll kill us to keep us quiet. We're dead either way." But Junho was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about Nari, who was just a scared little girl who wanted her mother. He was thinking about how she had trusted him when she had no reason to. How she held onto his coat like it was the only safe thing in a dangerous universe. He was thinking about how wrong it would be to abandon her now. "Then we'll die trying to get her home," Junho said quietly. "Get me those transport documents." "We're leaving tonight." Minho stared at him like he was crazy. The transport ship was old and crowded. Junho and Nari sat in the back corner of the cargo hold, surrounded by crates and other passengers who did not ask questions. The fake documents Sola had provided identified them as father and daughter, human colonists relocating to another system. Nobody looked twice at them. Nari was still wrapped in Junho's coat. It was dirty now, torn in places from their time in the tunnels, but she refused to let it go. She sat pressed against Junho's side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. "Where we go?" she whispered. "Away from the station first. Then we'll figure out how to get you home." Getting off Tajin Prime had been easier than Junho expected. Sola had done more than provide documents. She had also bribed a cargo inspector and arranged for them to board during a shift change. By the time station security realized Junho and Nari were gone, they were already 3 hours into space. But easy did not mean safe. Junho knew that every station they passed through would be dangerous. The bounty on Nari was still active. Anyone could recognize her and turn them in. The ship's destination was Ganwei Station, a major trading hub. It would be crowded and chaotic, which was good. They could disappear in the crowds. From there, Junho hoped to find a ship heading toward Velothi space. The journey took 5 days. During that time, Junho watched Nari carefully. She was different from human children. Quieter, more observant. She would sit for hours just watching other passengers, studying them with those large dark eyes. On the 3rd day, she started teaching Junho words in her language, simple things like water and thank you and safe. Her voice was soft and musical when she spoke Velothi. It sounded like singing. "Why you learn my words?" she asked. "If we're going to your home, I should know some of the language. Besides, you're learning my language." "It's only fair," Nari smiled. It was the first real smile Junho had seen from her. It made her whole face light up. "You good person, Junho," she said. "My mama will like you." Junho was not so sure about that. He had essentially kidnapped the Empress's daughter. Even if his intentions were good, he suspected the Empress would have strong opinions about that. They arrived at Ganwei Station without incident. The station was enormous, 10 times larger than Tajin Prime. Thousands of ships docked there every day. Aliens of dozens of species crowded the corridors, speaking in languages Junho did not understand. He kept Nari close, one hand on her shoulder at all times. It would be easy to get separated here, and he could not lose her. Not after coming this far. They found a cheap room in the lower levels of the station, the kind of place where nobody asked questions as long as you paid cash. It was small and dirty, but it had a door that locked. That was enough. "Stay here," Junho told Nari. "I need to find us a ship. Keep the door locked. Don't open it for anyone except me. You will come back?" There was fear in her voice. "I promise. I'll always come back for you." Junho spent hours searching the docks. Most ships heading toward Velothi space were commercial vessels with strict passenger manifests. He could not risk official documentation. He needed something less formal. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a small trading ship called the Dalbaum. Its captain was a grizzled old alien named Hyuk, who looked like he had seen everything the galaxy had to offer and was not impressed by any of it. "I need passage toward Velothi space," Junho said. "For me and my daughter." "I can pay." Hyuk looked him up and down. "Velothi space is restricted. Humans don't go there." "What's your business?" "Family matter. I'm returning her to relatives. Your daughter is Velothi. Adopted." Hyuk studied him for a long moment. Then he named a price that was 3 times what Junho had expected. It would take almost all the money he had saved. "That's robbery," Junho said. "That's the price for not asking questions. Take it or leave it." Junho took it. He returned to the room to find Nari exactly where he had left her, sitting on the bed with his coat wrapped around her. She jumped up when he entered. "We have a ship. We leave in 6 hours," relief flooded her face. "We go to Mama?" "We're going to try." Those 6 hours were the longest of Junho's life. Every footstep in the corridor outside made him tense. Every voice made him wonder if they had been found. He kept his hand near the small knife he had bought from a station vendor. It would not be much use against guns, but it was something. Nari fell asleep against him. Even in sleep, she held onto his coat. Junho wondered what had happened to her before he found her. How long had she been held by her kidnappers? What had they done to make her so afraid? When it was time to leave, he carried her. She was light enough that it was easy, and carrying her meant he could move faster through the crowds. The Dalbaum was small and looked like it had seen better days. But its engines hummed steadily, and that was what mattered. Hyuk showed them to a tiny cabin that barely had room for 1 person, let alone 2. "Meals are at fixed times. Don't wander around the ship. Don't ask about cargo. We clear?" "Clear." The ship launched smoothly. Junho felt the familiar sensation of acceleration as they left the station behind. One step closer to getting Nari home, one step closer to safety, or so he thought. On the second day of the journey, Hyuk knocked on their cabin door. His face was serious. "We need to talk. In private." Junho told Nari to stay in the cabin, then followed Hyuk to the small bridge. The captain closed the door behind them. "I know who she is," Hyuk said quietly. Junho's heart sank. "I don't know what you mean. Don't play games with me, human. That child is Princess Nari of the Valathi sovereignty, daughter of Empress Hana. Her face has been on every newsfeed in the galaxy for the past 6 weeks. The Valathi have been searching for her desperately. There was no point in lying. Yes, there's a bounty on her. 15 million credits. I know," Hyuk crossed his arms. "That's enough money to retire. To buy a new ship. To live comfortably for the rest of my life." Junho's hand moved toward his knife. If Hyuk tried to take Nari, Junho would fight. He would lose, but he would fight. But Hyuk was not reaching for a weapon. Instead, he was pulling up a screen showing news reports. The bounty is not from the Valathi government. It's from a private source. Someone who wants the princess found before she can return home. Someone who wants her dead. Junho stared at the screen. "Who? That's the question, isn't it?" Hyuk turned to face him. "The Valathi succession is complicated. The Empress has enemies within her own court. Rivals who would benefit from her daughter's death. This kidnapping was not random. It was political. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have a daughter. She's grown now, living on the other side of the galaxy. But I remember when she was small. I remember what it was like to want to protect her from everything." Hyuk smiled sadly. "You're not her father. You're not even her species, but you're protecting her like she's your own. That means something. So you're not turning us in. I'm going to help you, but you need to understand what you're facing. Getting her home won't be easy. There are people watching the borders of Valathi space. If they see a human traveling with a Valathi child, they'll know. They'll try to stop you. Then how do I get her home?" Hyuk thought for a moment. "There are old smuggling routes. Paths that avoid the main checkpoints. I know some of them. I can get you close to Valathi Prime, but the last part of the journey will be up to you." "Why would you risk this?" "Because someone should stand up to these people. Because that little girl deserves to see her mother again. And because you remind me that there's still good in the galaxy, even if it's rare." Hyuk extended his hand. "I'll get you as close as I can." Junho shook his hand. "Thank you." The journey continued. Days turned into weeks. They stopped at small stations to refuel and resupply. Junho kept Nari hidden as much as possible, but there were close calls. At one station, a bounty hunter seemed to recognize her. Hyuk created a distraction while Junho hurried Nari back to the ship. During the long hours of travel, Nari talked more about her home. She described the palace where she lived, with gardens that stretched for kilometers. She talked about her mother, who was strong and wise but also kind. She talked about missing her bed and her toys and her tutors. "When I go home, you come with me," Nari announced one day. "I don't think your mother will want me around. I'll just bring you home, then go back to my life. No, you stay. You are my friend now. You protected me. Mama will want to thank you." Junho did not argue. Let her have her fantasies. When the time came, he would deliver her to the palace gates and disappear. That was safest for everyone. They were 4 days from Valathi space when disaster struck. The Dalbum dropped out of hyperspace for a routine course correction. Within minutes, alarms started blaring. "We've got company," Hyuk shouted from the bridge. 2 ships. Moving to intercept." Junho grabbed Nari and ran to the bridge. Through the viewport, he could see 2 sleek vessels approaching fast. Military-grade ships. "Expensive ones, mercenaries," Hyuk said grimly. "Someone told them where to find us. Can we outrun them?" "Not in this old bucket. They'll overtake us in minutes." The communication system crackled to life. A cold voice filled the bridge. "Dalbom, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Hand over the Valathi child and you will not be harmed. Resist and we will destroy you." Nari gripped Junho's hand so tightly it hurt. She was terrified. Hyuk looked at Junho. "What do you want to do?" Junho looked at Nari. 3 months had passed since Junho arrived at the Valathi palace. He still could not believe this was his life now. The palace was beyond anything he had imagined. Gardens stretched as far as he could see, filled with plants that glowed softly at night. Towers of crystal rose toward the sky, catching the light of 3 suns. Everywhere he looked, there was beauty and precision and power. His quarters were larger than his entire apartment on Tajin Prime had been. Servants asked him constantly what he needed. At first it made him uncomfortable. He was used to taking care of himself. But slowly he had learned to accept help, to say thank you instead of apologizing for existing. But the biggest change was Nari. The frightened child he had found in the storm was blooming into someone confident and happy. She laughed now. She played. She studied with her tutors and trained with her guards and spent every spare moment with Junho. She still had nightmares sometimes. On those nights, she would come to his quarters, and he would tell her stories about Earth until she fell asleep, and she still wore his coat. The palace staff had offered to clean it, to repair it, to replace it with something finer. She refused every time. The coat stayed exactly as it was, worn and patched and precious. Junho stood on a balcony overlooking the city below. Millions of Velothi lived here, going about their lives in a civilization thousands of years old. And somehow, he had become part of it. Footsteps approached. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. He had learned to recognize the Empress's presence. "You look thoughtful," Empress Hana said, joining him at the railing. "Just thinking about how strange life is. 3 months ago, I was fixing pipes. Now I'm living in a palace. Do you regret staying?" "No, never." He looked at her. "But I still don't understand why you wanted me to stay. You have thousands of guards who could protect Nari. Why me?" The Empress was quiet for a moment. She had changed over the past months too. She smiled more. The hard edge of constant control had softened, at least when she was with family. "Because you protected her when it mattered most, not because it was your duty, not because I ordered it, but because you chose to." She paused. "And because my daughter needs someone who sees her as just Nari, not as a princess, not as a political piece, just as a child who deserves kindness." Before Junho could respond, Nari came running onto the balcony. She was dressed for formal events now in beautiful robes, but she still moved like any excited child. "Junho, Mama, come quickly, the visitors are arriving." Junho had almost forgotten. Today was important. The Empress had invited representatives from across the galaxy to the palace. She had promised an announcement that would change everything. They walked together to the great hall. It was enormous, with a ceiling so high that clouds formed near the top. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species filled the space. Junho recognized some of them: diplomats, leaders, representatives of powerful governments. He also saw humans, real humans, not just him. There were perhaps 20 of them, looking as uncomfortable and out of place as Junho felt. One of them caught his eye and nodded. Junho nodded back. The Empress took her place on the throne. Nari stood beside her, regal and composed. Junho stood slightly behind them, not sure where else to go. He was not royalty. He was not a diplomat. He was just the human who had wrapped a cold child in his coat. The Empress raised her hand. The hall fell silent. "I have called you here today to speak truth." Her voice carried across the vast space without effort. 3 months ago, my daughter was taken from me, stolen by traitors who wished to use her as a weapon against my rule. For 6 weeks I searched desperately. I used every resource of my empire. I offered rewards. I sent soldiers to every corner of known space. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. And I failed. None of my power, none of my resources, none of my empire's might could find her. She was hidden too well, protected by those who wanted her dead. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was the first time the Empress had spoken publicly about what happened. My daughter was found by a human, a maintenance worker from a colony station. He found her by accident, cold and afraid in a storm. He wrapped her in his coat to keep her warm. The Empress gestured to Junho. Every eye in the hall turned toward him. He wanted to disappear. This human did not know who she was, did not know what reward he might gain. He simply saw a child who needed help, and he helped. When dangerous men came for her, he protected her. When the safest choice was to hand her over, he chose to run. He risked his life, his freedom, his future for a child of a species that has treated his own kind as inferior. The hall was completely silent now. For weeks he kept her safe. He fed her from his own rations. He told her stories when she was afraid. He carried her when she was too tired to walk. And when mercenaries attacked, when death seemed certain, he did not abandon her. He stayed until the very end. The Empress's voice grew stronger, more powerful. I have spent my life believing that the Velothi were superior, that our technology, our culture, our very existence was more valuable than that of younger species. I treated humans as useful tools, as laborers, as something less than equal. She paused, and Junho saw tears in her eyes again. I was wrong. The murmurs grew louder. Some aliens looked shocked. Others looked angry. This human showed me what I had forgotten. That compassion has no species. That honor is not determined by technology or age or power. That sometimes the greatest strength is simply choosing to help when no one is watching. When there is no reward. When it costs everything. She stood, and her robes seemed to flow like water. From this day forward, the Velothi sovereignty will no longer restrict human travel. No longer assign them only to labor. No longer treat them as lesser beings. Humans will be welcomed as equals in our space, our universities, our commerce. This change is not a gift. It is acknowledgement of a debt. One man saved my daughter. That means humanity saved her. And I will spend the rest of my reign ensuring my empire understands what that means. The hall erupted. Some aliens were cheering. Others were shouting protests. The human representatives looked stunned, like they could not believe what they were hearing. The Empress raised her hand again. And slowly, silence returned. I know many of you will disagree with this decision. You will say I am emotional, that I am making policy based on a single incident. Perhaps you are right, but I am the Empress, and this is my choice. If you cannot accept it, you may leave my court. No one moved. Even those who disagreed would not dare challenge her directly. Furthermore, I'm establishing a new position. Junho of Earth will serve as the first human Velothi cultural ambassador. He will help our species understand each other, build bridges where there were only walls, and he will remain as guardian to Princess Nari, for she has chosen him, and I honor her choice. Nari was beaming. She grabbed Junho's hand and squeezed it. The Empress continued. Let this story be known across the galaxy. Let every species hear of the human who saved the Velothi princess. Not with weapons, not with technology, but with kindness, with a coat given freely to a cold child. Let them understand that humanity's strength is not in their ships or their armies. It is in their hearts, in their strange, irrational capacity to care for those who are not their own. She looked directly at Junho now. You asked me once why I wanted you to stay. This is why. You represent something my empire needs to learn, something the galaxy needs to see. That power without compassion is empty. That technology without kindness is hollow. You remind us all that we are not defined by what we have, but by what we choose to do. The formal ceremony continued for hours. Treaties were signed. Agreements were made. Junho stood through it all, still not quite believing this was real. Later, after the guests had left, Junho found himself back in the gardens with Nari. She was playing with other children now, both Velothi and a few human children whose families had been invited to the palace. She was teaching them a game from Earth that Junho had shown her. Empress Hana joined him on the bench where he sat. You looked uncomfortable today, she said. I'm not used to being the center of attention. I'm just a maintenance worker. You were a maintenance worker. Now you are something more, whether you want to be or not. Junho watched Nari laugh as she played. She's different now, happier, because she feels safe, because she knows someone will protect her, not out of duty, but out of love. The Empress smiled. You gave her that. You gave me that. Peace of mind that someone cares for her as a person, not as a princess. What happens now? With all these new policies? Change. Slow change, perhaps. There will be resistance. Many Velothi still see humans as inferior. One speech will not undo centuries of prejudice. She looked at him seriously. But it is a beginning, and sometimes that is all we need. One person willing to do the right thing. One action that inspires others. One coat given to a cold child. Junho had never thought of himself as special. He was just someone who did what seemed obvious. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being human meant seeing what needed to be done and doing it, regardless of the consequences. News of the Empress's announcement spread across the galaxy within days. Junho's story was told and retold. The human who saved the princess. The maintenance worker who risked everything. The coat that changed history. The Dalbomb shook violently as weapons fire streaked past them. Red warning lights flashed across every surface. Alarms screamed. Junho held onto Nari with one arm and gripped a support rail with the other, trying to stay on his feet. "They're gaining on us," Hayuk shouted over the noise. His hands moved frantically across the controls, pushing the old ship to its limits. "We've got maybe 3 minutes before they're in effective firing range." Another blast hit the rear shields. The ship lurched sideways. Sparks exploded from a control panel. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. Nari buried her face against Junho's chest. He could feel her trembling. She was trying so hard to be brave, but she was just a child. This was too much for anyone, let alone someone so young. "Can we make it to Velothi space?" Junho asked. "Not at this rate. They'll disable us first." Hyuk's face was grim. "I'm sorry. I thought we had more time." The mercenary ships were close enough now that Junho could see them clearly through the viewport. They were sleek and deadly, built for one purpose. The lead ship moved into position, preparing for a killing shot. This was it. They had come so far, survived so much, but it was going to end here in the darkness of space. Junho looked down at Nari. "I'm sorry. I tried." But Nari was not looking at him. She was staring out the viewport at the approaching ships. Her eyes had gone strange, unfocused, like she was seeing something far away. "Nari?" The girl did not respond. Her whole body had gone rigid. Then impossibly, she started to glow. A soft silver light emanated from her skin, growing brighter with each second. "What's happening to her?" Hyuk shouted. Junho did not know. He had never seen anything like this. The light was so bright now that he had to shield his eyes. Nari opened her mouth. What came out was not a scream, not words, but something else entirely. A sound that bypassed ears and hit directly into the mind. A pure note of terror and rage and desperate power. The sound wave erupted outward from her small body like an invisible explosion. It hit the Dalbomb's hull and kept going, expanding into space. When it reached the mercenary ships, both vessels suddenly veered off course. Their engines sputtered. Their weapons went dark. Then Nari collapsed. The light vanished. She fell limp in Junho's arms. "Nari. Nari, wake up!" Junho shook her gently, then more urgently. She was breathing, but her eyes were closed. She would not respond. What did she do? Hyuk was staring at the mercenary ships, which were now tumbling through space, completely disabled. "How did she do that?" "I don't know. We need to get her help, now. Velothi space is 15 minutes away at full speed." "Hold on." The Dalbomb raced forward. The mercenary ships grew smaller behind them, helpless and drifting. Within minutes, they crossed into Velothi territory. Almost immediately, 3 massive warships appeared, surrounding them. A voice crackled over the communication system. This time it was speaking Velothi, but the tone was unmistakable. Authority. Command. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately. You are in restricted space." Hyuk looked at Junho. "Your turn. Tell them what you're carrying." Junho moved to the communication panel. His throat was tight. His heart was pounding. But Nari was unconscious in his arms and he was out of options. "This is Junho of Earth. I am carrying Princess Nari. She needs medical help. She's hurt." There was a long silence. Then the voice came back, sharp and urgent. "Do not move. Do not power your weapons. A boarding party is coming now. If this is a trick, you will not survive." Minutes later, armed Velothi soldiers materialized aboard the Dalbomb. They moved with lethal efficiency, weapons raised. But when they saw Nari unconscious in Junho's arms, everything changed. The weapons lowered. The soldiers' faces showed shock and relief and something else. Fear. One soldier, A woman with silver rank markings stepped forward. She looked at Nari, then at Junho. You found her. After 6 weeks, you found her. Her voice shook slightly. The Empress will want to see you immediately. She needs a doctor first, Junho said firmly. Our medical ship is already prepared. Come. They transferred to the warship. Medics took Nari from Junho's arms, and for a moment, he felt a sharp panic at letting her go. But they were gentle with her, placing her on a floating stretcher with equipment Junho did not understand. The medical bay was more advanced than anything he had ever seen. White light and humming machines and doctors who worked with swift precision. What happened to her? One doctor asked. She made a sound. A wave. It disabled 2 ships. Then she collapsed. The doctors exchanged glances. Psionic discharge. She's too young for that kind of power. Should not be possible. Will she be okay? She is exhausted. Her mind pushed beyond its limits. But she will recover. She is strong, like her mother. They let Junho stay while they worked. He sat in a corner watching them care for Nari. His hands were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off and reality was setting in. He was on a Velothi warship. He had been carrying the princess of an empire that could destroy Earth with a thought. He had no idea what would happen next. After what felt like hours, Nari's eyes opened. She looked around in confusion, then saw Junho. A weak smile crossed her face. You stayed. I told you I would always come back. She reached out one small hand. He took it, holding it gently. Her skin was still warm from whatever power had flowed through her. The doctor spoke quietly to the soldier with silver markings. Then the soldier approached Junho. The princess is stable. The Empress is waiting. You will come with me. They walked through corridors that seemed carved from crystal and light. Everything was beautiful and precise and utterly alien. Soldiers stood at attention as they passed. Junho felt completely out of place in his dirty clothes and worn boots. They entered a room that took his breath away. It was vast with windows showing the stars beyond, and standing at the center, looking out at those stars, was a woman who could only be the Empress. She was tall and elegant, dressed in robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Her skin was the same silver blue as Nari's, but darker with age. Her face was beautiful and stern and carrying the weight of ruling billions. When she turned to face him, Junho saw that she had been crying. Her eyes were red, the only imperfection in her composed exterior. You are Junho of Earth. Her voice was rich and controlled, but he could hear the emotion underneath. Yes, Your Majesty. He was not sure if that was the right title, but it seemed appropriate. You found my daughter. I did. You protected her, for weeks, across multiple systems, at great personal risk. Yes. The Empress walked toward him slowly. Junho forced himself not to step back. She stopped a meter away, studying him with those large dark eyes that were so like Nari's. Why? It was not the question he expected. I'm sorry? Why did you protect her? You are human. We have not treated your species well. We consider you primitive. We restrict where you can travel, what work you can do. We have given you no reason to care about us, yet you risked everything for a Velothi child you did not know. The Empress's voice cracked slightly. Why? Junho thought about how to answer, about all the complex reasons and simple truths. She was cold and afraid. She needed help. What else could I do? The Empress stared at him. Then, to his shock, tears began streaming down her face. She made no move to hide them. For 6 weeks I searched. I used every resource of the Empire. I sent soldiers and spies and offered rewards. And none of them found her. None of them brought her back. She paused, struggling with her emotions. But a human maintenance worker, with no resources and no power, succeeded where my entire empire failed. And you did it simply because she needed help. Your Majesty, I had thought I understood the galaxy. I thought I knew which species mattered and which did not. I thought humans were useful but ultimately insignificant. The Empress stepped closer. You have shown me how wrong I was. You have shown me what true honor looks like, what compassion looks like. And it came from a place I never thought to look. She reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. It was a gesture of respect, he realized. Of gratitude beyond words. The traitors who took my daughter have been found. They were members of my own court who wanted to force me to abdicate. They have been arrested. Justice will be served. Her voice hardened for a moment, then softened again. But that is politics. What matters is that Nari is home, and she is home because of you. The doors opened. Soldiers wheeled in Nari, still on the medical stretcher but awake and alert. When she saw her mother, she cried out, "Mama!" The Empress rushed to her daughter. The stern ruler vanished, replaced by a mother who had thought she would never see her child again. She gathered Nari into her arms, holding her like she would never let go. Junho started to back away to give them privacy, but Nari reached out toward him. "No, Junho, stay. He is my friend. He saved me." The Empress looked at him over Nari's head. There was something in her expression. A question. A possibility. "It seems my daughter has grown attached to you. We've been through a lot together." Your Majesty. Nari was talking rapidly in Valathi now, still holding on to both her mother and Junho. She was telling her story, and though Junho did not understand all the words, he understood the emotion. She was telling her mother about the storm, about the coat, about being protected. The Empress listened to everything. Then she spoke. And though she was speaking Valathi, Junho somehow knew it was important. Nari translated, her voice excited.